Welcome to the Wisdom of Show. I'm your host, Simon Bowen, and every week I'm speaking to the world's greatest leaders, thinkers, and entrepreneurs about complex issues and impactful leadership. Join us in the Renaissance of Wisdom. Okay, welcome everybody to the Wisdom of. Obviously, in the show, we're talking to business leaders from all around the world, and we're really tapping into what is the wisdom behind their success and what are the things that they would share with people at a deep level of insight that maybe people don't think about. We're in a world that is crying out for stronger levels of leadership, politically, in business, socially, and in so many avenues. And so this gives us the opportunity to tap into the genius of some of these wisdom leaders, if you like, or wisdom-driven leaders around the world. And one of them is really one of the most recognizable faces in Australia, Janine Allis, who started a company initially called Boost Juice. I'll come back to that in a minute, and has a huge CV of success, which I'll share in a second. But Janine, welcome, and thank you so much for gifting your time to us to have this little chat.
Oh, my pleasure.
Janine, I have to tell you a secret. So we live in Perth, opposite side of the country to Melbourne and Sydney, and we love road trips. And so we drove to Melbourne to visit my wife's family a couple of times. And in 2002, either 2002 or 2004, we did these two trips. Now, we can't quite remember which one, but we'd driven across the Nullarbor, the whole central part of Australia where there's nothing. And we landed in Adelaide, another 2 days driving after 2 days on the road at that point to get to Melbourne. And we were looking for something, and we found a little shop in Glenelg called Boost Juice. And we had never had anything like that before. And I've got 3 daughters. And so we stopped and we go, we'll get a Boost Juice. And I think we got a Boost Juice every day that we were in Adelaide after that until we headed off. And all we needed to know was, is there a Boost Juice in Perth? You changed the face of retailing in Australia with Boost Juice. And of course, you've had so much more success since then. But I actually want to touch on your bio in a minute, but I'm just interested in what it means to you to have had such an impact on the retail landscape, because you created a different style of retailing, particularly in food and that kind of market. What does it mean to you to have had that sort of impact on that retail landscape?
I don't know if it doesn't mean anything either way. Like, it's an interesting, because if you're you just do. You have a vision, you have I want to get more vegetables and fruit in people's diet. I want to make sure I create a business that we love our customers every day and choose the customers to choose us over someone else every day. So I feel like it's like a battle. So I don't know if I sort of like that's a result of all the hard work, I think, is that you do, suddenly smoothies are a natural part of what we do.
It's interesting. You had this, did you have a really clear vision of what it was going to be, or did you have a feeling about what you wanted to create and the vision unfolded as you stepped into the frame, starting this business and building it, and did it unfold? Or would you say you had a really clear sense of it right at the outset?
No, we had a clear sense of what we wanted to do and how we wanted to grow. I think naivety was a huge part of what I was doing, because I didn't actually know what business was and how it worked, or debit and credits and legals and food standard codes and all the million things you had to learn to get into business. So I think we just sort of started thinking that it's going to be huge, because how hard could it be, And I had 3 little kids at home. The youngest is 7 months. The oldest was 4. So, I was sort of juggling a few balls in the air. So it was but I used to travel overseas and I'd see concepts over there. I think, well, our business is better than that, or that concept's good. So I just think, well, if they can do it, what stops us from doing it? So it was then, and then it was just basically, off you go. My husband was doing the leasing. He was really successful on leasing, which was a challenge in itself, because I had all these sites, stores to build and open and staff and all the things you do when you open a retail store. So look, I think it was, are we there yet? Far from it. I think if you think your business is there and you've made a success of it, then, quickly sell, because your business is a living organism. It forever continues.
Yeah. And, that naivety sometimes is useful, because sometimes if you know what's ahead, you might not even, jump into the frame. It's a part of the currency of success is both fear and courage. There are currencies of success, and fear and courage are two of them. And, part of this is you have to accept the fear, or actually just be completely naive to it, jump into the fray, and then have the courage to do something. And then often when people have this idea, other people might say to you, well, don't be silly. What do you think? You may just not listen to them, but when others would say to you, when you started that journey around 2000 and you went to the US and you looked at concepts and things like that, how did you counter that whole, well, don't be silly, who do you think you are kind of thing? Because I know the imposter syndrome is written and spoken about really, really extensively in the world of leadership. How do you counter that, or how did you? Today, you might not even bother about it, but how did you counter that?
Look, in honesty, my life was so full with raising kids and doing the business. I didn't have time for people to tell me any good or it wasn't any good. I was just going for it. But it's interesting. You're right. I've come across a lot of businesses, and there's two things that people do. People either go for it. It's not that hard. It's amazing, which, then sometimes that is folly as well, because you should do a bit more research to jump into business. And the other times people go, which, the first time I opened the first store in Adelaide, the leasing guy said to me, I'll hang on to the sign to be released, because, you're just selling juices. That's just ridiculous. So, the thing is, so I just got on with it. I'm actually positively skewed as a person. So for me, I think that there's a solution to every problem, and touch wood, so far so good. There has been a solution to every problem. And you just every day you wake up, and some days are good days and some days it's more challenging, and off you go.
Yeah. So, Boost Juice is in 660 stores, I think, in about 12 countries now. So it's a sizable, business machine. You've been named in BRW as one of the 15 people that changed the face of retail. You've been, you're a regular member on Shark Tank Australia. You've been on Survivor Australia. This is quite a range of things. And we're Survivor fans. We'd love to kind of dig into that and find out how much of that is real and everything else, but that's probably for another.
It's all real.
It is all real.
Just so you know.
It's hard yards, right? And, all of these things are testing. All of these things are about testing and pushing. And, you have a book, The Accidental Entrepreneur, and talking about the journey with Boost Juice, and, sharing kind of 30 big strategies or ideas from that. So there's a history there of success, and success leaves breadcrumbs. It leaves things behind that people can learn from. And I wonder, I mean, many people have asked this question, but I think over the course of a history of success, I think you can generally look at a very small number of people who have been pivotal at certain points in time to that success. It could be less than a half a dozen. And I know that there are about 4 to 5 people that I would pinpoint really specifically at certain points of time. Who have they say the 2 or 3 most influential people been in your success, from the perspective of, this is either what they demonstrated to me or taught me, or here's just how I saw them showing up, and this is what I took from it. They might not have even known that they were mentors. But what are the 2 or 3 big things you've taken from observing other people?
I don't think there's probably the one person is my husband, who we are a great team. We are completely yin and yang. He is someone that I bounce off. He bounces off me. I bounce off him. I have enormous respect for him with regard to his skills, which are very different to mine, and mine are very different to him. And so, yeah, we are a good team. So we are very good each other's, sounding board, I would say. Other than that, it's really a matter of just having an open mind and a curious mind. So I will source it. If I find that I'm lacking in something, I will source out someone who's an expert in that area and take them for coffee. And I'll sit there with a pen and pen, and I'll just write away, So I don't think there's been, moments where I've gone, right, oh, that has now been insightful. I'm now going into a different direction because of that. I just think it's a lot of a combination of little things that have contributed, and always having a curious mind and never thinking I've got the answer. I never think I have the answer. So, so I always think that there's, and particularly in this era where, there is people like your daughter who is more in connection with, who's a, obviously a digital native, who's more connected to that era than we are. So there's a lot to learn from everyone. So I think it's just having an open heart and an open mind to actually embrace what's out there and just be present for it. People hear good stuff all the time. They just don't do anything with it.
Yeah. My father had an insatiable curiosity, and it's probably the thing of greatest value that he handed down, I suspect, to myself and my siblings. I think curiosity is a superpower. It certainly is in sales and business and leadership. And I'd like to lean in on that a little bit, actually, because it's easy to say to people, just be curious. It's a bit like saying to people, well, just be present. Well, okay, the world's pretty busy. Life is busy, got children and everything else. Have you done anything actively to cultivate your curiosity muscle? Your ability to really, because curiosity can also lead to distraction. There's a yin and a yang, and I think curiosity is a muscle. I'm really interested in whether you've done anything consciously to really actually make that a superpower for you.
The answer is no. No, I think that in some respects, naivety that got me into business, and then the more I knew about business, the more I knew things could go wrong and started to go pear-shaped if I wasn't on the ball, enabled me to have that little bit of fear, so that I was always going, how do I be curious enough to be as efficient as I physically can? So I was an early adopter onto anything, whether it was AI, I was like, okay, let me do a course on it, right? Because I don't understand it. Like, it was social media, whatever it was, I was going, if this is a tool that can make my life easier, mate, I'm all in. So, and so, it's also those, whether it's South by Southwest, which is sort of a melting pot of ideas and concepts, I think you just put yourself in those spaces. So I don't know whether it is taught, whether it's in you, but I just love life, and I think that there's an end date at some point, so you want to make sure that you're living to your max.
Yeah. Do you filter fast? Do you have a pretty fast mechanism to filter what's in and what's out in terms of, well, I'm going to take that much further and
completely.
much deeper?
Yeah, completely. But that just comes from time and trial and error, doesn't it? And also what's relevant to me, because I might have an issue or a problem in my head, and things will come to me and I'll go, no, not that one, not that one, that one, that one. Oh yeah, that one. Okay, I'm going to go down that rabbit hole and see if that's sort of help.
Yeah. So if we were trying to give some guidance, particularly to younger leaders, right, who don't, there's a certain amount of intuition that just comes with age. Just life lived equips you to filter differently. But if we were going to give particularly younger leaders, 2 or 3, here's and it might be subconscious, and we just might speak it out loud for the first time today, but here are the 2 or 3 things that tend to guide that filtering, that puts things in, puts things out. And if they're in, I'll let my curiosity run with it. Are there 2 or 3 things that are, relevance was one, that you said, because context always wins, relevance matters. So I think that's a legitimate filtering mechanism. Are there any 2 or 3 others that you think people would do well to just run something through that lens, that due diligence, before they run hard at something?
I think at the end of the day, you have the end in mind, and whatever tools that you can pick up along the way to get you to that end is pretty much it, really. And that could be multiple things. It could be, end in mind would be, I want to be a really healthy older person, right? Okay, so if I hear something that is relevant to health or wellness, then I might prick my ears up and go, oh, let me understand that a little bit more. Or AI, right? Okay, there is a tool now available that it's been available for about 3 years that will speed up productivity. Okay, that sounds good. Let me look at that one. So I think it's so I think that there is things that will come across your desk, or you will source them out. but it's basically an interest to you. If you go, people also go, oh my God, AI, oh God, it's technology, forget it. It's too complicated. I don't understand it. I'm not even going to open my mind to it. So I don't know why people don't, why people do. I think, some sort of psychologist will be smarter than that to tell you, but that's how I work.
Fantastic. And you have a unique opportunity, right? You've had people present themselves in front of you through things like Shark Tank, who are pitching ideas. And I don't know the mechanics of the show behind the scenes, but they're coming to a group of people who are discerning thinkers in terms of business, and they're putting an idea in front of you. And then you've also been active in an incubator sense with numbers of business and things like that. I'd love to kind of draw on the insights you might have about the limiting beliefs, or even maybe the false beliefs that people might have about what's most important. When you're floating this idea, particularly if you're going to go and try and raise capital, or get partners involved. All of our ideas are fantastic when we start a business, we think, but then when you have to pass muster and get other people involved, what are some of they're not lessons to you, but what are some of the things that people might think that are simply not true, or they're false assumptions that you've observed that are commonly occurring amongst people that are doing this sort of thing for the first time?
Quite often they haven't done the work, right? They sort of try and cut corners, and they don't know the numbers. They don't know the fundamentals. They just get caught up in the pretty pictures and the fact that, people, when they first start their business, they all think it's going to be the biggest thing and it's going to be worth millions, right? Everyone does. And then they come to you and they think, because they think it is going to be worth millions, you clearly will think it's worth millions because it's the best idea on the planet. So they don't sort of put themselves in the person who they're pitching to's shoes. Instead, they just put themselves in their shoes and what they think is happening with the business.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes people come to me and goes, I have this great idea, but I can't tell you because you will take it because it's the best idea ever. And you sort of go, that's okay, don't tell me, it's all good. So I think people just haven't been beaten down by business. I think the people who have been in business a bit longer, who have had ups and downs and have learnt lessons, they're a lot more humble. I think we were speaking about that earlier, because they know that it's not easy. You get it wrong, no matter how smart you think you are. And people early in startup world haven't learned those lessons yet. And so quite often they have ridiculous valuations until they start running out of money. And so and also always go, well, it's worth 10 million, Janine. You can have 10% for $1 million. I go, okay. When do I think I'll get my 10% back? Oh, well, what, you want a return? Like, yeah, I kind of do. So it's, again, not putting yourselves in the shoes of the person you're pitching, really, I suppose, is the mistake people make.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people are unfamiliar with the corporate environment and how it assesses things. And, what is the payback period going to be in terms of the return on investment, and then return on investment above initial spend. I mean, we see it all the time when people pitch those ideas. What do you, if you were going to take someone aside before they even walked into the room, if you took a shine to somebody and you just wanted to shift a paradigm, a significant paradigm they might be holding in their head before they walk in the room, so they come in so much more powerfully, what would you be talking to them about on the other side of the door before they walked in?
I think I'd say be themselves, right? Because if you want to be an investor, it's a relationship. And so you need to make sure that that person knows who you are as a person. And that's really important. I'd also say I'm a firm believer that there's two types of people in the world. There are people who are verbs and people who choose to soar. The people who are verbs are the victims. They're entitled. They need to be rescued, and they blame the world for their woes. The people who soar are solution-based. They're accountable. They take ownership, and they're responsible for the outcome. So what I look for, and what I would say to them is, if you make a mistake, that's okay. Come up with a solution. You should be pitching to them of all the things that have gone wrong and what you did about them, because no business owner will ever believe that everything has gone to plan and everything was smooth. So I think that honesty, and also that I'd be looking for, have they got grit? You know, what sort of grit have they got? Have they been beaten down and then they've clawed their way back up to success through grit and determination and nous? So yeah, it's those sort of things that I would talk about.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it leads us into this question about personal branding. You have a huge personal brand here in Australia that we're all familiar with, and obviously a personal brand internationally as well. And we live in an increasingly technology-driven world, right? And the naysayers on AI would say it's going to wipe out human contribution and value. Those of us that use it know that it's incredibly useful, and it's going to take us to, some pretty incredible places. But I'd love to lean in on the issue of personal brand, because when you think about all the great companies, Apple and Virgin and others, there is always a face on it. They're not faceless corporations. How, was personal branding and positioning yourself a key part of the strategy always, or was it something that you lent into? The second thing I'm going to ask you is, any kind of thoughts you have about what's important in terms of personal brand. But did it emerge out of the business and the success you were having, or had you always planned to drive the personal brand as a way of driving the business?
Look, I was a publicist before I started Boost Juice Bar, so I fully understood the power of PR and the power of a voice. So was it a strategy? It was basically a need that we had no money. So we had no money to market. And so you had to use every tool that you possibly have to actually get exposure. And if the tool was a young man who's starting out and having a crack doing a juice bar, well, so be it. But when you say personal brands, I know you've said, Janine Allis and, like, Jeff Bezos and they're big names and, like Elon Musk. But people also need to understand that their own personal brand in their own world is also really important. The most valuable thing that you have in life is your reputation. Whether you're a small business, you're an executive or whatever, if you don't protect your reputation or your personal brand, then you cannot complain about the consequences of that. It will always catch up. So if you want to cut corners and do business deals that aren't fair, or if you want to lie and cheat your way to get places, your personal brand will be damaged. So sometimes people, protecting your personal brand sometimes costs money, because, you've got something wrong in business and you've got to stand by it and pay it back or do whatever. You're better off doing that and protecting your personal brand than having short-term gain. So I think that know that it is your greatest asset and you need to protect it accordingly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we often see the opposite happening too, don't we? People just not having a strong enough defensive strategy around their personal brand, even in terms of their ethical practices. And, business is, and it's not my original thought, but business is one of the most powerful forces for good on the planet in the hands of the right people. It can do things governments and charities and others can't, which means business should be noble. And how we sell and go to market should be one of the most noble things that we do. But that starts with the heartbeat of the business, which is often the founder. And who are they? And how do they show up? And what is okay and what is not? And so, I love that idea of personal brand in your own space, because it could just be the personal brand with the employees in your team, and in your local community, as opposed to a national or international personal brand.
Yeah, correct. No, that's exactly what my point is. It doesn't matter whether you've got a big media brand or it's simply between you and your one employee. Do what you say what you do.
And do you play that out with the leaders in your own company as well? Do you challenge your leaders to be really aware of their own personal brand and how they're being perceived?
It's not necessarily a dialogue. You don't use it as a personal brand, but I think in other ways you do go, if you, look, I go back to the verb and source analogy, if you stuff up, awesome, right? Be the person who is known to be solution-based, not just needs to be rescued every time.
Yeah.
And even that one, like, you want to label people, right? You go, okay, I label that person as, people might say he's a gun, he's just amazing, or she's amazing. And that's actually developing their personal brand. That people don't think of it that way. People don't talk of it like that. but it is a reputation that you're building to create success. And it's not necessarily just in business. It's like, you know, your personal brand as a girlfriend. Like if someone tells you a secret, a girlfriend tells you a secret, and you share that secret with someone, what are you doing to that? What is that label that you are putting upon yourself, or the girlfriend will put upon you? So, you know, I think there's ways of doing it, but that's how I look at your personal brand.
Yeah, I've had for years when people say, look, it's just business. You know, you've done the wrong thing by some people, but it's just business. I don't think that statement is ever true. That it's
well,
just,
it is. No, I disagree. It is true. So, for example, if someone says to me, "Sorry, Janine, I haven't given you that refund. It's just business," I go, "No problems, because the business I do is not with you." So that can be business for you.
That is true.
That's okay. But you will actually do business all the way down to you're insolvent.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm okay that you think that's business and that's how you do business. All good, but not for me.
Yeah. It's not a justification for poor behavior. I guess it is a driving force if that's the nature of the business that they're.
And if that's what motivates them and that's what drives them and that's what, then knock themselves out. But there's a reason why 45% of businesses fail. There's a reason why 4 out of 5 businesses fail in the first 5 years. It's because people think short term sometimes.
Yeah. And so if you think about your own business and the leaders in your business, so if we talk about leadership just broadly for a moment, you know, one of the qualities of great leaders is their willingness to park kind of ego and learn from other people in and around a specific issue or something like that. Is there anything that any of the leaders in your business have surprised you with that you never anticipated hearing, but it's changed your perspective on some things inside the business or outside of the business?
Well, look, I think everyone at different times come up with some great ideas, and you know that you go, wow, that's pretty inspiring. Off you go. It doesn't happen like a more as much as you think, because it's quite often the people that have those great ideas are the entrepreneurs that are sort of going off and prepared to put their house on the line and their money on the line for it. But there's some extraordinary executives out there that are coming up with some real innovation. And you want those ones that have that curious mind that we've been talking about, or the people who are accountable and not victims. And you want those people, they're the people who are constantly sort of looking for the next big thing or the next thing that can make the business great. I can't right now come up with some examples off the top of my head, but I'm sure after this podcast I'll go, here's a few.
I think the interesting observation, though, is that many of those people are entrepreneurial at heart. They're willing to take risk, which is the real price entrepreneurs are paying. You know, you said there are birds and then there are those that soar. I think of that in terms of, you know, there are net consumers and net contributors in the world. And, you know, what a lot of people don't see when they look at a business that's being really successful and they want that business to equalize everything, they don't see all the risk that was taken just to get to that point. You know, the risk is often not equated by people as a part of the investment price that entrepreneur made. You know, I can remember listening to Mark Bouris talking about walking around in the middle of the night thinking about where is payroll going to come from next month, you know, and on the outside to everyone else, it looked pretty great, but you know, where is payroll going to come from? The risk is the price, and not everyone's ready to step into that breach. I would love to know.
Simon, just on that, not everyone's made for business, right? And it's not bad. It's not a bad thing. You know, some people want to just do a job, work for someone else, and go home at the end of the day and switch off and just be with their family and not think about work, right? And even look, that doesn't mean executives don't take their work home. Of course they do. But when you've got your house on the line or you're looking to pay your payroll or whatever, you're on 24/7. And it's not for everybody. And it's okay that it's not for everyone, you know? So I think that, you know, some people even in this era where people are, you know, getting onto TikTok and YouTube and making all this money in different industries, they feel that thing of, okay, well, I have to be like them because they're doing it. So I have, but I think the thing is that everyone has a path, and so I think it's okay for for people not to feel like they have to follow the trend of a business if it's not for them. And sometimes people aren't built for it.
And contribution can be made at every level too. You know,
Absolutely.
We are blessed with a fabulous team, and the contribution that's made by them is far, far surpasses what I would ever be able to achieve without those people, around us. So contribution is at every single level. We interview people all the time. We presuppose some questions based on, research and what we know of them. But what's the question? I know this is without notice. What's the question I really should be asking you if we were looking for a key piece of advice for leaders in business? What's the question I haven't asked, or that people don't often ask you that we should, based on things that you've learned and the experiences you've had and things like that?
I don't know. Maybe what are you prepared to give up, not to get? Because in actual fact, if you want to be successful in anything, Olympian or a business person, it's what do you want to sacrifice for it? So for me, yeah, I had 3 kids, but was I present because I was, madly trying to, run this beast called Boost Juice Bars? Probably not. Did I really, was I prepared to give up my health because I was just so manic with regard to the business that I only just wanted to focus on that? And I think that nothing in life comes without a price. And, right now, the price was worth it for me because I love what I do. I love the creation of business. And right now I've got older and wiser, and I certainly look after myself 10 times more than I have. In actual fact, I'm healthier now than I was when I was probably 23 years ago. So, so I think it's what you're prepared to give to actually then get it to do business. I remember I sat with this woman the other day, and she had this very successful food business. And I said, before we get into how to make your business grow, I actually asked her, what do you want in life? And she said, well, I want to, look, I love my surfing. I love my surf trips. So I want to surf every day. I said, that's okay. You can do that. I get up at 5:30 to do that every morning. And then she said, I want to only work 3 days a week. And I said, okay, if you only want to work 3 days a week, that's okay. And do that. Find something to do that. But maybe not grow the business in its current form, or think about bringing a partner in, or because first of all, you've got to work out what you want in life before you start working out how to get there. Because if you just focus on the business, it might be not aligned with what you actually want in life. You might want to be an artist, and you feel like you have to follow your father's footsteps to be in business because he's been in business for 20 years, but all you want to be is an artist. So I think always ask yourself, what do you want?
Yeah. And I think the question about what are you willing to sacrifice, or what's the price you're willing to pay for this, is not a question that people often ask themselves. And we don't just mean in financial terms, but business is a transfer of energy and value. And so 3 days a week will give you 3 days a week of transferable value, right? But is it going to build an empire? And there's a whole lot of thought process in there. And I wonder if not enough people actually go through that deep thinking process about what do you really, really want and what's the price you're happy to pay to actually get there.
And what are you going to do when it goes pear-shaped? People don't think about the worst case scenario. People don't think about an exit strategy with a partner, going into a partner in business. They don't spend enough time on just preparing for if shit happens.
Yeah, interesting. So I would normally finish off with some fast questions. However, you have been a contestant on Survivor, and I think most people are probably interested in a little bit of that experience. What I'm interested in is it is absolutely as much a show about human behavior in the collective and in a competitive sense, and how people show up differently. And of course, we could talk about are the challenges real and everything else, but you told us beforehand, absolutely. What did you discover in that process that maybe you didn't expect to learn about people? Perhaps about yourself, but more particularly about how people in that kind of environment are operating, because leaders are operating in environments that sometimes have all those sort of features. I'd love to get your learnings out of the Survivor experience.
I think one of the learnings was that the body gives up so much quicker than the mind. Oh, no, probably the other way around. The mind gives up quicker than the body, right?
Right.
And the amount of times, I mean, I was probably one of the older ones, certainly nowhere near the stronger ones, but I was surprised on challenges that I was always in the top three. And not because I was stronger, because I wasn't, not because I was fitter, because I wasn't, but it was because I just found techniques that worked for me that enabled me to push through where others gave up. And I think that's something you take in business. When you think it's all too hard, keep at it. When you think you're at the end, you're not. Keep going, where failure is not an option. So I think that was one thing I took over and was like really quite perplexed and surprised. Sometimes I was standing there in one of the challenges and there was people dropping off and I'm going, how am I still here? And it wasn't because, as I said, I wasn't stronger. And yeah, for some reason, my mind just went, oh, okay, we're here. Let's suck it up and do it. And it hurts. Okay, it hurts. Keep moving.
Yeah.
The other thing was that the different dynamics of team. I was very fortunate enough to get a couple of really good friends in Survivor, which helps with your North Star and keeping that North Star and keeping that integrity. So in actual fact, it was like Pia Miranda. I don't know if you saw our season, but the actress Pia Miranda, who's still my very dear friend today, her and I were our North Star. So it was like, it's a game and it's a game of deceit and it's a game of lying. But we had this moral compass that we would never do it to each other. And so I think that helps. The other thing I found is, it's broken into three areas. It's, you get put on the champions tribe, they then mix the tribes, and then it's a solo. And I think there's very much different dynamics. And if you're related to business, you go, okay, you're thrown into a team, you've got to get that team working. Finally, that team's working. That's great. Hooray. In business, the team's great. Suddenly people leave and then they go to another team. And so you've got to, then it's an adjustment of how do I now work with this new team and how do I understand the dynamics? And I've got to put more time into it to ensure that the outcome's right. Then it becomes a solo game. And that's when by this stage, people are becoming a little bit primal and a little bit feral and a little bit of Lord of the Flies sort of comes into play. So it is very interesting, the psychological part of Survivor and playing it. It is look, it was a great experience. It is so real, like you are. I mean, I'm not a very big person anyway, but I walked out about 9 to 10 kilos lighter than I went in. I just came out bones. And you don't do that from them feeding you in the background. The challenges were really quite challenging, but also it was Fiji, so OH&S and all that sort of stuff was kind of a suggestion, not really that strict. So you had to be on your wits with regard to a lot of things. So no, it was, and I think it's the only reality show out there that actually just films and doesn't get involved. And so that's why it's one of the classed as one of the best, because it is a genuinely reality.
Yeah, and I guess, and obviously you see all of the ranges of human behavior, back to what we were talking about before, the people who have real integrity and are congruent all the time with the values they want to operate with, versus people that might alter their values based on circumstance. And you would see the full range of that up close and personal in the experience.
Yeah.
It's have you ever read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl?
Yep.
It's he was a psychologist that was in the concentration camps, and he wrote a book after the concentration camps. He's sort of the father of existentialism. And he said, when you first saw everyone in the camps, you would have thought that the youngest and fittest would be the ones that survived, and invariably they weren't. The people that survived were the ones that had something significant yet to do. And for him, it was write this book about his observations of the concentration camps. For another mathematician, it was to publish this mathematical theory that he had. And so the people that survived were the ones that had something significant yet to do. This, the North Star that you're talking about, relationships. You may not have been the fittest and strongest in the challenges, but you had a mental strength that allowed you to stay focused. And it's back to what you keep saying: know what you want. What do you want in life, and what's the price you're prepared to pay? And so, Janine, on that note, I know your time is precious, everyone's is. I really want to thank you. I want to thank everybody that's listened to this all the way through to this point, and I would, the bio notes and other information will be with the show, but I would encourage people just to start to observe some of the things that Janine does and has done. There is a breadcrumb trail there for people in business, particularly, but for leaders in general. So Janine, thank you so much for giving us your time. We really appreciate it. And you've helped us to close out this current season of Survivor with a little bit more insider information.
No, my pleasure. No problem at all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.